Hello, this is Fayme Haper, and I'm going to be making some tutorials for AllFreeKnitting.com. It's a new channel, and I'm happy they asked me to join. It's literally storming around me, but I'm determined to make my video today, my first one for AllFreeKnitting. And I'm wearing a knitting hat I designed, and also a knitted shawl I made without a pattern. And we're going to purl. I'm going to teach you how to purl in the storm. This is easier to do with variegated yarn, and for this project I'm going to use 2 straight needles, and I'm going to use different colors so you can see what I'm doing easier. Of course, unless you want to buy 2 pairs, you're going to be using the same color. And these are a bit long. You can get needles that are somewhat shorter than this. And we're going to purl. Knitting is primarily made up of 2 basic stitches, your knitting stitches and your purling stitches. So if you know how to do both, you can literally make about probably 90% of knitting patterns, because it's a combination of those stitches that make cabling and lace and ruffles and everything else. So using your favorite method of casting on, you're going to cast on 20 stitches. I don't care which way you cast them on there, just make them somewhat loose. That makes knitting a lot easier when you're starting out. Usually beginners are too tense. They're so worried and they don't have a rhythm down, so they tend to strangle their knitting needles. So, loosen up a little, make them nice and loose, because eventually you have to get another needle in there too. Okay, I'm just going to knit 6 rows. Now, just for the sake of remembering, it's easier to remember funny things. Imagine you have a crazy Aunt Purl living out in the country somewhere. And that Purl is such a big flirt. She is just so forward. She's just a fresh little thing. I want you to remember that, because purl, you hold the yarn in the front or forward. When you knit, you hold it back. When you purl, you hold it forward. So just remember that your Aunt Purl is so forward, you'll remember to hold your yarn forward in the front. Now you're probably wondering why on a purl video I made you knit for 6 rows. It's because it gives you something to hold on to make it more stable, and it warms up your hands so that when you do the harder stitch you're nice and warmed up. And I picked 30 stitches because that way you get to purl 30 times before you have to turn around and go the other way. So you get lots of practice before you have to switch sides. Now I want to talk about the difference between the front of a stitch and the back of a stitch. So check out this first stitch here. If this was my house and this was my porch and I walked, this is my front door right here. That's the front of the stitch. See that? I'm going in the front. Now when you knit, you go in this side, you go in the back door, like that. But for purling, you want to go in the front door of every stitch. So I'll just do a quick one here. Front door with the yarn in the front, or forward. Okay. Front door of the next stitch, and so on. Now don't get messed up down here. You want to go just in the stitch part, right here. This line here should be underneath your needle. Okay? Alright, when I was showing you that, my battery died. So one more time. The yarn's forward. I go in the front door, wrap around counterclockwise, push through, slide off. Second stitch. Go in the front, yarn is forward, wrap counterclockwise, push through, slide off. Now if these are too tight this way, push in this way a little so that you're not fighting to get it off the end of the needle. In the front door, wrap around counterclockwise, push through, slide off. And that's your purl stitch. So you just keep on going down the row, down the row. I'll be right back when I get to the end.
If I say left, you you say right, but I love you just the same. So we seldom agree on things. Guess being stubborn is to blame. But when I ask if you've had enough and wanna start with someone new, you look so sad and miserable, I don't know what to do.
Now if I were to purl every row, it would also be garter stitch, because the front side of knit stitch, if you flip the fabric over, the back side is the purl stitch. So I don't want to just do that again, or you won't be able to see what I'm doing. So after I do this purl row for you, we're going to do another row of knitting. We're going to turn it into what's called stockinette stitch, which is one row of knitting, one row of purling, one row of knitting, one row of purling, and so on. Okay, as I get to the end here, I'm still purling. Still purling. Now, be careful at the end, because this is where the needle tries to slide away and fall out of the stitches. Just hang on tight. Purl that last stitch, push it well away from the point, and then turn your work around. And then we're going to go back the other way and knit one row. We're going to knit this row, so yarn is to the back. We're going to go in the back door. Remember, you're walking up to your house. This is the front door, this is the back door. You're going to go in the back door, wrap around counterclockwise, pull forwards. Now we're knitting again. Don't let that throw you. We're going to knit to the end of this row. And you can see right here it looks a little different because it's turning into stockinette stitch. Alright, I'm almost to the end of my knitting row. Remember to hang on tight so you don't lose your needles. The weight of the needle can pull it right through. Okay, here's the last knit. Going to knit that off. Push it well away from the end. Turn it all the way around. And we're going to purl the next row. So I want this, like my ant purl, forward in front of the needle. See that? We're going to purl this row. Purl the first one, push it back. Alright, go as slow as you need to. Front door, counterclockwise, push through, slide off. Alright, we're going to go ahead and purl this row. Now, I want you to see that here's the garter stitch, all the knit rows we did at the beginning. The smooth part through here is the stockinette stitch. Knit on the front, and then purled on the back. See how that looks? Say you have one of those patterns though that switches off between knitting and purling. Well, it might be a bit much if you just learned today how to purl, but if this is just a review for you, let's review that. Say the first stitch is knit. That's pretty common. Knit one, slide it off. Then you're going to move that yarn forward. Like your ant purl, you're going to go in the front door and push back. Okay, that's one purl stitch. See how it has a little line across here, a little bump? Now you're going to put this in the back again, do a knit. And yes, it will slow you way down until you get better at it. Pull forward. Now when you're finished practicing, go ahead and knit one row and then cast off on the next row. Now in my case, this next row coming up is a purl row. See the little bumps? So I'm going to cast off as if to purl, which means I'm going to purl two, one, two. Then I'm going to carefully lift this stitch over the needle and over the stitch. So now I just have one. Purl. Lift this stitch, the one nearest my right hand, over the other one, carefully over the edge, and now I have one. So just do that all the way to the end until you have only one stitch left. Alright, here is literally the last stitch. If I can get a hold of it with my chilly fingers. I'm gonna, oops, this has to be in the front. Remember, your yarn has to be in the front or forward? Okay, gonna throw the last stitch. Gonna grab this one, pull it over, and I've got one left. Now, don't lose that last one. I'm going to cut this here, poke it through there, and tighten up my last stitch. Now, what do you do with this? Other than it was a great learning tool, don't throw it away. Save it for when you're doing freeform knitting and crocheting, and you can sew this right into a little neck scarf or alongside a hat or something. Save all those cool pieces. At the very least, if you make a sweater and run out of yarn, you can always unravel this for that last cut. So there you have it, how to purl, and I'm going to go in and have some hot cocoa and warm up my fingers. Toodles!